Hello, everybody. It's Andrea. My topic today, and I'll try to get through this quickly, is the inevitable implosion of the Democrat Party. I've got a huge outline for this one, so I'll try to go quickly. The Republican Party's promise, now I'm not saying we are perfect to our promises, but the promise is that if we are a constitutional country, we follow the rules of law, and we are truly colorblind, we will create a country in which all can thrive without the government facing any one group over the other. We still have to govern to the center. We cannot govern to the crazy people, to the extremes, to the sad ones. As a decent moral people, we have a responsibility to treat them with respect and to care for them if they need care, but that is the limit. The Democrat promise has always been, although it's more and more clearly expressed, once they get hold of the pie, they'll hand out pieces to all the intersectional members of their community, the women, the multiple minority groups, the different sexual groups, they'll all get a piece of the pie. But people are beginning to realize, A, that the pie is not that big, B, that the burgeoning openly communist movement within the Democrat Party is simply interested in overthrowing the Constitution and not handing out a pie, and C, that the growing Muslim movement doesn't like the subgroups within the movement. So I have a lot of evidence for this, and it's a center that cannot hold. The first thing I want to talk about is a fight in Queens. So let me read here from a New York Post article from a few days ago. Black New York City politician slams DSA as white supremacists while growing Dem feud spills onto social media, is the title of the New York Post essay by Craig McCarthy and Matt Troutman. The text says a prominent Black Big Apple politician compared Mayor Zohran Mamdani's comrades in the Democrat Socialists of America to white supremacists as a bitter rift between Democrats spilled into social media. Queens Borough President Donovan Richards, and I'd just like to point out that that's an Irish name, breathed new life into a long-standing complaint among minority lawmakers that the largely lily-white DSA ignores race in its crusade to grow its ranks and dismantle capitalism. Here you can see his tweet, and it's very straightforward. White supremacy comes in all forms. The essay continues, the slap erupted from a debate online after a report in the New York Times that highlighted how the extreme left wing of the Democrat Party focuses on furthering the group's agenda and largely has blinders on when it comes to Black and Latino members and issues important to them in the 5 boroughs, and still more information. So this wraps up what I've got from the New York Times, New York Post thing. And for all the DSA factions' lip service on race and social justice, many minority voters in New York and beyond look askance at its actual policies and priorities, with the National Black Empowerment Action Fund, for one, contending their agenda is bad for African Americans. The DSA has backed candidates from minority backgrounds, including 2 of its most prominent members, Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Latina, and Mamdani, who is Ugandan-born, although I should add he's a Muslim Indian, but the group's makeup is overwhelmingly white. A 2021 survey found 85% of the DSA is white. The group also has faced accusations that it uses vulnerable districts to parachute in one of its own people instead of recruiting a candidate, often in opposition to seasoned Black and Latino contenders. So this is a giant fissure because the DSA is indeed white, as a Nate Silver study revealed, and I wrote about that at the site today. Not only is it white, but it's made up of college graduates. It's not a working class movement at all. It doesn't represent up-and-coming Black and Hispanic people who have not joined the upper classes or the middle classes yet. And the DSA is growing fast. Its membership has grown by 1,400% in the last decade. That's obviously the more passionate people, but we know from surveys of young people that they're all in on socialism as long as they can get wealthy from it. And this essay alludes to Hispanics getting upset also. That is something that is making its way into the public discourse. So that's the DSA versus racial groups. It's not just in New York, it's also breaking out in Michigan. And what you're seeing is now the Muslims are part of this fight. So Punchbowl News reports on the fact that blacks are throwing their support behind a traditional Democrat, Haley Stevens, in the Michigan fight. So here's what Punchbowl News has to say. Black voters influenced Michigan Dem Senate primary. Rep. Haley Stevens bid to topple progressive insurgent Abdul El-Sayed for the Democrat Senate nomination is increasingly becoming dependent on the four-term House lawmakers' ability to run up the score among black voters. Recent polls have shown that Stevens is crushing El-Sayed among what has always been considered a key demographic among the Democratic electorate, around 1 in 5 voters. Stevens boasts the support of the Congressional Black Caucus PAC, and several influential black Democrats in Washington have been outspoken in favor of Stevens. One of those black Democrats is Jim Clyburn from my own South Carolina. I'm a transplant. I'm not a real Southerner, but I live here. And he has long been one of the leaders of the American Black Democrat voter. He was the one who got Biden into office, essentially, in 2016. Here's what Clyburn has to say from the same Punchbowl article. Yet El-Sayed has a lot of work to do over the next 13 days to cut into Stevens' lead among black voters. Case in point, his Detroit rally on Saturday had very few black attendees, something that Stevens' allies have since highlighted. It also underscores a broader demographic challenge and criticism facing the progressive movement over the last several cycles, that it's an overwhelmingly white faction that doesn't represent black or minority voters. And here's where Jim Clyburn comes in. I saw a picture that concerned me coming out of Michigan. I saw the rally. Rep. Jim Clyburn, Democrat, South Carolina, said in an interview. I didn't see a single person that looks like me. That tells me all I need to know. And just to let you know how deep this fissure goes, Cenk Uyghur, who is a progressive or radical leftist Muslim, now joined in the fight, attacking Clyburn. So here's his tweet. Whenever an outsider candidate does well, establishment Democrats trot out utterly BS charges of sexism and racism. Their main hatchet man on race is Jim Clyburn, who's one of the biggest corporate sellouts in Congress. Now he's doing it to Abdul El-Sayed, so predictable. So now we've got the blacks, the leftists, the Hispanics, and the Muslims all fighting. Who are we missing from this? Well, the gays, who have supplanted women as an important group. So the transgender has knocked out women. We're all now about fake women instead of real women. And Washington State offers the implosion on the women's side. And in fact, it involves a woman candidate. That candidate is someone named Chaudhry. Let me see if I've got this name right. Hang on, I got it somewhere. Melissa Chaudhry. Her bio is interesting. So before I get to the fight, let me give you a few points from her bio. I looked it up on ChatGPT. I'm pretty sure it's right. It claims that all this information came from her own website. So I've got a chunk of the bio on the screen, but I'll just summarize some of it and read others of it. Chaudhry graduated from Central Kitsap High School, where she says she helped establish the school's gay-straight alliance. She earned a bachelor's degree from the Evergreen State College in 2019. So what you're seeing here is someone who is already, as a teenager, a radical leftist. And this is kind of weird because her father was a U.S. Navy physician, according to her bio. So she has roots going back to the Mayflower and the Daughters of the American Revolution. Her grandfather was imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp. Her father was a U.S. Navy physician, but by the time she was in high school and college, she was already a radical leftist. Then something got added to the mix. Chaudhry got married. She is married to Mohammed Zaid Chaudhry, a Pakistani-born immigrant, former firefighter and paramedic, and disabled U.S. Army veteran. She appears to have adopted Islam and wears a hijab. Contemporary reporting says she took her husband's surname. That's obvious. Her husband has been involved in a lengthy immigration and naturalization dispute. The government accused him of failing to disclose an Australian conviction connected with an attempt to open a bank account using another person's passport. He was taken into ICE custody during a citizenship interview on October 21st, 2025, and detained for more than 3 months. So Chaudhry, hard leftist, married to a Muslim. What's going to win out? Well, let's see her trajectory through this series through a tweet from Visegrad. The tweet opens this way. Melissa Chaudhry, a Democrat congressional candidate in Washington's 9th District, has acknowledged that she does not publicly promote LGBTQ plus rights on her campaign website because she does not want to alienate Muslim voters. When asked why her campaign lacked references to LGBTQ plus rights, despite saying she supports them, Chaudhry replied, because a lot of Muslims do not feel that way, unfortunately. She also said she was careful about her Muslim constituents. So, Islam seems to be winning on this one. The LGBTQ alliance is not happy. The Visegrad tweet continues. The comment sparked backlash from Washington Stonewall Democrats, whose chair, Andrew Ashiofu, said, our community is not expendable. Now, let me add here, I haven't looked up Ashiofu's image, but Ashiofu strikes me as maybe, possibly, being a name with roots in a non-white genetic culture. I'm trying not to be racist about this, but when I see that name, I'm not thinking it's like Randall or O'Sullivan or, Baker. Going back to the tweet, LGBTQ plus rights are not optional, he continued. They are foundational to any candidate seeking Democratic support. So now we've got a fight between her and the gays. But here's what's really interesting about where the weight of the Democrat Party is going. She tries to thread the needle, but Visegrad adds some really important information at the end. Chaudhry later sought to reassure LGBTQ plus voters, writing, if you are queer, your rights are safe with me. She also pointed to her sister, who is in a same-sex relationship, and said she has LGBTQ plus friends. You know, that sounds like the old, some of my best friends are black or gay or whatever it was. But here's the kicker. Muslims make up around 2% of the Seattle metropolitan area, while approximately 17% of adults identify as LGBTQ+. So what we see here is a leftist candidate who married a Muslim and is willing to jettison 17% of her possible vote in favor of 2% of her possible vote. Part of this is that she's following her husband's faith over her youthful beliefs. Part of this is that Islam is where the energy of the left is going, because leftism is about nihilism, and no matter how passionate they are about Marxism and government, we're all going to die someday, and more of them are going to be putting their money and their faith and their politics on the surety of Islam and the promise of paradise. So I will end to you not on a cheerful note, but on a note of, well, maybe cheerful. Be optimistic about the possible explosion and implosion of the Democrat Party as its intersectionality inevitably collapses, because the pie is only so big. But in terms of where its heft and momentum are going, be afraid, be very afraid. And on that cheerful note, I guess it was cheerful for me. Thank you.